Tired of life in the big city? Of pollution, the stench of smog, and kilometer upon kilometer of traffic jams? Follow me to the quaint town of Twin Peaks, where the air is clean, the folks are nice, and cherry pie is as good as it gets. Today I'll be your guide, and I'm set on making you enjoy the most of this magnificent place. So we start, as one must, in the beginning, deep diving into local history. The dreamlike forests of Twin Peaks were first set foot upon by a plethora of native tribes: Snoqualmie, Umpqua, Meadow, Cayuse, Yakima, Spokane, Flathead and Nez Perce peoples shared the land. Little is known about them, as the woodwork that they employed has been lost to time and the weather. And whatever little is known is to be taken with a grain of salt, as we can often trace its source to the not-so-kind European explorers that got this far west by the early 15th century. All these eyewitnesses, however, share a surprising account. All tribes seem to have been wary of the deeper woods, since they claimed it to be inhabited by spirits capable of possessing those who wandered deeper than they should. But folklore ain't the only thing that united these tribes. To facilitate trade, the different peoples developed a pidgin tongue together, called Chinook, which even European travelers would end up learning. Among the first known natives to set a lasting foot upon Twin Peaks, memory recalls Dominic Renault. After a failed career as a stand-up comedian up north in Chilliwack, he established a successful trading post half a mile over Whitetail Falls in the 10th of August, 1803. Yet, not long after settling down, he was overcome by severe depression. One day, he vanished betwixt the woodland fog, never to be seen again. Almost a century after, by 1888, Twin Peaks was little more than a refugee camp for trappers and hunters who roamed along Black River. The population's need for pelts, ales, and opium was tended by the Wahanakak trading post, which came to be known simply as Thor's Post. 2 years went by, and it was then that James Packard and his fiancée, Unwin Packard, changed the name of the game for all the time to come. For you see, they sought to tap onto the most bountiful boon in the land, the wood. James, a studious graduate of Harvard and Yale universities, was already at his age an astute entrepreneur, leaving behind the family business in Boston to make a name of his own. And as for Unwin, she was well versed in the mystical crafts, which were very popular at the time. She claimed to have been born somewhere else in the solar system, in some mysterious place called the Land of Bloom. And that costed her many days in the madhouse, among them the last days of her sorry life, where she left behind 5 lovely sons. Though the couple had their eyes set upon Seattle in the beginning, James opted for Twin Peaks come spring of 1890 for the lower exploitation rate on the land. Buying up a great estate, he built Packard Mill, attempting to emulate the success of Gilder Mill in Tacoma. Soon, the huntsmen took up the axes and saws in search of honest work and decent wages, and though they never got neither, their work made the mill a prosperous affair. On the cultural side, Unwin came to form and be president for a decade right before her last lockup of an old women's occult association, known as Those of Bloom. Come 1891, Twin Peaks' second landmark family came to town. Rudolph and Pixie Martell were fleeing for their native St. Louis after their house caught fire under mysterious circumstances. On their way west, as Rudolph dreamed of finding riches in San Francisco, their mules dropped dead on the trail, and the couple ended up unpacking in Twin Peaks once and for all. Rudolph also jumped to the conquest of local real estate, investing what little was left of the family fortune. By taking up the workers that Packard dared to reject, the Martells set up another mill, albeit humbler than the Packards, and the two family firms came to dominate the town's economy. As housing sprawled upon Black Lake and Twin Peaks set its sights on progress, Orville Horn and his wife Brolitha came to town with the intention of setting up a general store. Coming from a retail emporium in Minnesota, Orville had become too impatient to wait for his turn leading the dynasty, and thus chose to turn west to build a business empire of his own. Horn's general store came to compete with Thor's Post. But then, in a suspicious fire worthy of Faulkner's book, The Hamlet, Thor's post was turned to dust, giving the Horn family a monopoly over the whole region. After damages to his locale in an earthquake in 1905, Horn, by then a wealthy magnate, expanded his trade into today's Great Warehouse at Horn's department store. With the turn of the century, the second generation of rivalry between Packards and Martells followed. Rudolph Martell died young of a gangrene, and thus Pixie, feeling that nothing of interest remained for her in Twin Peaks, fled to a native tribe in the southwest, leaving her son and heir Neelith Martell as head of the house. Neelith was ambitious, but he was limited by his sickly disposition, which kept him in bed most of his life, and forced him to marry by mail order to his spouse Bessie Spoon. Despite his best wishes to maintain the business, Neelith Martell was not made for the hard work of woodworking. When local inventor Crosby Truman offered him a patent on the revolutionary V-shaped loom, Neelith rejected it, and thus Crosby went to Ezekiel Packard in the luxurious manor of Blue Pine Lodge. Unlike his counterpart, Ezekiel, born of James and Unwin, had been born for business, and unlike the passing interests of his predecessors, he had his sights set exclusively on wood. With Crosby's innovation and a specialized focus, the Packards doubled the Martells' log production, and after much struggle and a series of unfortunate events, Neelith Martell was forced to sell his sawmill to the Packard monopoly. Their bad luck did not end there, as Neelith died of food poisoning and Bessie was killed by a thunderstrike, leaving all of the family inheritance in the hands of their son, Pete Martell. The Packard regional monopoly was expanded by Ezekiel and set in stone by his son Andrew, who was greatly aided by the arrival of Ezekiel's astute and ambitious sister, Catherine. As for Pete Martell, he had no interest in riches, and tried to live a quiet life as a fisherman with what he had left. Unable to make ends meet in this Walden-esque state of affairs, Pete had to take up the axe and work for the Packards, where he fell head over heels for Catherine. They would marry come the 1950s, but to the Packards, the whole affair was nothing but a power grab to secure what little was left of the Martells' real estate, and thus the Packards consolidated their bad reputation as a lineage guided only by cold-blooded wit, much like the Snopes family of Faulkner's saga. But in the shadows, the Van Horn family crept up, as they kept finding prosperity in their affairs. Orville's son, Ben Horn Sr., had laid on the ground the first stone, back in 1927, of what would become the Great Northern Hotel. The shrewd management of Ben Jr., combining the department store and the hotel chain, made the family's influence extend far beyond the confines of Twin Peaks.
Oh, Diane, I almost forgot. Got to find out what kind of trees these are. They're really something.
Now that we know all about the local history, let's look at some wonderful landmarks hidden within this quaint and idyllic all-American town. Let's begin with the bulwark of culture in the region, the Old Opera House. The first opera house was built in 1892, just 2 blocks south of Country Road J. Famous actress Sarah Bernhardt inaugurated the space by performing The Lady of the Camellias. Another great host of the opera house was the writer and comedian Mark Twain, who arrived in town to stage a reading of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. But the day before the show, Twain took a walk along the trace of Ghostwood, and returned to the town in such shock that he resolved to leave immediately. He declared to have sensed the presence of death in the woodland depth, and claimed with great anxiety, "The owl seemed to murmur my name, as though my soul was already theirs." Not much after Twain's visit, in 1896, the building was destroyed in a fire. James Packard rebuilt the opera house in 1916, with the intent of bringing his favorite composer, the tenor singer Enrico Caruso, to the town, but he got lost on the way to Twin Peaks, and the audition never took place. In a second attempt in 1918, however, Caruso did make it to Twin Peaks and played his best areas, Rigoletto, La Bohème, Tosca and Pagliacci. Come 1925, the opera house had to keep up with the times, and a cinema screen was installed. Some remarkable screenings that took place in Twin Peaks include Charles Chaplin's The Gold Rush and Sergei Eisenstein's The Battleship Potemkin. After a short and unlucky runtime as a cinema, the Opera House became abandoned, but it was not let to rot. In 1969, it reopened as a concert stage to have the Canadian band The Guess Who tour Twin Peaks. The group wreaked such havoc on the stage that the town hall prohibited any rock concert that did not contractually compromise itself to behave properly. Now, for an even more interesting place in our town, we approach the expanse of Ghostwood National Park. The majestic trees that make up the foliage are Oregon white oaks, Rocky Mountain maples, and, most abundantly, paper birch, that fare well on coarse terrain affected by deforestation caused by the 1905 earthquake. As for the pine trees, we bask under the shade of western large pines, ponderosa pines, the wood by which the companion of our lovely neighbor, the Log Lady, was made, and most remarkably the Douglas spruce, one of the most majestic trees in all of America.
What kind of fantastic trees have you got growing around here? Big, majestic.
Douglas firs.
Douglas firs.
The oldest of them range somewhere between 800 years and a millennium, and they happen to hold the honor of nesting our signature birds, the great horned owls and pygmy owls. In Twin Peaks, it is believed that owls are supernatural creatures, capable of observing that which is unknowable to humans. After a short walk within the national park, you can easily stumble into Owl Cave, which happens to be the surface of a cave system connecting to a myriad of inactive volcanoes around the region. It was first discovered by the native Flatheads, who used it as a meeting hall and pelt warehouse, but they do not claim to even have been there before the making of the mysterious paintings that cover the rocky walls of the cavity. The authors of the markings are a mystery, though historians calculate that they must have been the first hominids to arrive in Twin Peaks. Flathead legend tells of the place as a waypoint for inhabitants of the afterlife to visit Earth, and so the messages are rumored to be left by passing spirits. And so, we end our itinerary in the last of the irresistible locations in town, the mouth of the Columbia River at Whitetail Falls. Without a doubt, the landmark that gives Twin Peaks its visual identity, we just have to cross the town to the northeast to get there. Standing at 183 meters tall, we set our gaze upon the third highest waterfall in the United States. Higher but more narrow than Niagara Falls, it has a flow of 937 million liters per hour. The falls are a popular tourist destination, and so rooms get filled at the Great Northern Hotel, located on a cliff with a privileged lookout over the sea. Local legend claims that those couples who hear together the roaring of Whitetail Falls shall remain in love forever. Now we're right at the end of our visit. Take any chance you have to try the delicious cherry pie at Double R Diner. For just $2.50, you're getting your piece of paradise. Well, we're right at the end of this video. If you have enjoyed, please leave a like, a comment, subscribe, and hit the bell if you would like to see more of us in the future. I am David, and this has been A Futile Conquest.